Hey, hi. Today, let's look into how we can use Bloom filter to improve performance when we use something like Postgres and uh, when we have use cases like we need to support a lot of filters. How can we use Bloom filters to achieve better performance? Let's look into that one today. Let's imagine you have a dashboard or something, and here you want to display the data for the customer, and you are also providing a filter to the users so that they can apply filters, and based on the filter criteria you can bring in the relevant data from backend and display here. So obviously we'll have the backend server, and this will be supported by DB, right? So this is a typical flow. So when customer applies some filter, the API call to the backend will carry those filter information, and backend server will convert or translate those filters into a SQL query, and that SQL query will be executed against DB, right? This is the typical flow. But the challenge part here is that we don't know what kind of filters, um, not kind of filters, but we don't know what combinations of filters user might apply. You have 10 filters, then you have almost 10 factorial filter combinations to use, right, for the customers. So it means that at the back end and at the database level, usually when we query data by few fields, frequently we apply we create indexes on those fields, right, in the table level. But in this case we don't know what combination it comes up, so we might need to create index on the all the 10 columns. And but since here we are using the combinations of columns in the query, we need uh, you know joint index, right, which includes these fields. So that's a problematic. Let's say if user wants to read data by column 1, column 2, we need to use index which is related to column 1 and column 2. Next time they want to use column 3 and column 10, we need to use the C3 and C10 combinations, right? So like that we'll end up with a lot of combinations. So the solution we can think of in this kind of situations is using the Bloom filter. How Bloom filter will help in this case is that we create index using the Bloom filter, including this column 1, column 2, and to column 10. So for each row the Bloom filter will be created, and that's going to have representation based on the values for that given row. 1 0 1 1 0, like that. So when we trying to read data from the table, let's say if you want to read from C1 and C2, you calculate the corresponding representation, like for C1 C2 it has to be 1, right, and then match against the all this Bloom filter index for the rows, and whichever rows have presence for C1 and C2 columns, those rows will be matched, and we can retrieve only those data back into the backend server and gives back to the dashboard. So the main thing I'm trying to highlight is that we can use bloom filters in situations like you have so many number of columns, and you don't have any definitive way to determine which combination of columns will be used in the where clause for that given query, and you want to support all the columns in your query. Then you can construct a bloom filter index and use that one to filter out the rows, and that way you can reduce the amount of data you are retrieving out of the DB. But the one catch here is that the bloom filter is known for giving the false positives, right? So in that case you might need some extra check, you know to make sure that the rows coming out of the DB are actually carrying the values for those columns. So yeah, that's a trade-off we need to live with if you want, if you're dealing with huge amount of data, and if you want quick response times. So get user will apply filters, the query will come to backend will fire up query into DB, and DB will use the bloom filter and gives back the data. Again, check here if the rows are matching the criteria, and send back the data to the front end. Probably if data is not carrying those values, probably we might need to fire back another query, so that because we might be using the pagination here, right? We need those many rows. Like if the front end is asking for 50 rows, we need to use back 50 rows, not 48. So for those two more rows, we need to fire on one more query and get back those date rows, and use back to the dashboard. Yeah, but if you're dealing with the huge amount of data, and to improve the performance, you can think about applying bloom filters.